Okay, so it is time to build another rack. So this one over here has got all my little ones in it that are sizing up, and this rack of 9 here. And as these little ones are sizing up, I'm going to need some more bigger totes to put them in. So Mango right now has been temporarily sitting on these, I think they're IKEA end tables or something. And so now it's time to build an actual rack to go underneath there. What my plan is it's going to be holding this size here. So these are the 28 quart. They are 16 inches wide. They are almost 2 feet long. So the shelf that they'll be sitting on will be 24 inches deep. I have this extra little piece of trim that I like to put onto here as well. So the first rack that I built for this size, I wanted it to really focus on natural light. Not sure that's the best route now at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build it a little more like the baby rack. So it's got solid sides over here. It does have a solid back on it back there as well. It's got heat tape running through each of the different levels. What I am not doing are these little rails here. So the rails, when I've done these baby bins, you need this to be pretty perfectly close up there. Otherwise they will escape. So that's an extra added thing that you have to do with these baby bins. I am not doing that with the bigger bins. So as you see, their gaps are less than perfect because I'm not perfect. But these gaps are more than fine for the bigger ones to not escape out of. There's one of our little stickers that I put on there with our logo. So that's my plan. I'm going to be building one that is modeled more like this. It will also have the melamine here. So this is melamine, and then it is a stained select pine across the front to match, make these kind of look like pieces of furniture. This one here, this is a sandy pine, or a sandy ply. So this is a plywood. It's painted on top, and then the bottom actually has a waterproofed coating that I painted onto there as well, because I had that left over from another project. It does make these tubs that have more space on here, they slide out pretty nice and smooth, but the two at the bottom, because they're a little bit tighter, they're a little bit tougher to slide out because it's got that waterproof coating on it that I painted onto there. So I like the melamine. I like how it slides nice and easy. It's a little bit harder to work with, but I'm going to give you guys tips on how to work with that 3/4 inch melamine and get nice clean cuts with that while we are going through building this Hello Honey. The size that I'm going to do is, again, for these totes here. These are 5 3/4 high, just a little bit under. Hey, sweet girl. And then I'm going to be doing a 3/4 inch piece of wood between them. The melamine is 3/4 inch. And then I will be doing this one 7 shelves high. So it's going to be this height here. So Mango is going to be bumped up a little bit. I was kind of checking on that as well. I have the step stool in here just to make sure that I can reach down into Mango's tank to grab him from down in there once it bumps it up. But it should be nice and level across here. It will be just 2 shorter than here, so it's going to cut a little bit shorter than this one here. But again, those pieces of wood are 3/4, so it'll be a little bit more spaced out on that. Actually, I misspoke. This will be 6 shelves high in order to support Mangoes on top of it. So it'll be more like around here, but a little bit higher because, again, this is 1/2 inch wood that's on those, and this is going to be built with 3/4. So that's what's going to go on there. Now, how do I design these? I'm going to walk you through a little bit of my chicken scratch that I've got going on here. This is what I did for the last one that I did because this is just in Excel. I like to be able to scale it out. When I design these, I also nest everything that I'm working on. This is done this way because I have, this one is melamine, and how I cut that for the shelves. They're a little bit smaller than the size that I need for this new one, because I'm going to go 2 wide on it as well, so I can fit 12 tubs. what I did over here is, this is my 1/2-inch board. I also used 1/2 inch for the sides and the top of the Grow With Me baby rack over there. At the same time, I was doing built-ins in my laundry room using the same wood. So I wanted to nest in, you can see like the tops and sides of the bins versus, or the shelf versus the tops and sides of my new cabinets that I did in the laundry room. So I nested that one out a little bit different. What I'm doing on this one, and a lot of the way that I design these, is how can I neatly fit the wood on here? So this is a 48 by 96 inch, so a 4x8 sheet of melamine. And how do I properly get as much in here as possible? So if I do a 24 by 32 inch shelf, I can perfectly nest in 6 of these on a sheet without any waste. I also made a little note to remind myself I have to router a groove in there so that way I can run the heat tape through the different shelves. And so I kind of tried out a few different ways to nest and how I wanted to do this. I've gone out and I've checked and see what scrap wood do I have in the garage. So I actually have some down there as well. So I'm going to use that to try and finish up things as best as possible without waste. And then what this shows kind of that 5 3/4 of the bin plus 3/4 of the wood. I'm doing 6 levels, and then I want a 2-inch gap on the bottom. So this is where I was measuring out, how do I want to do the sides? This is all my checking off of who was eating. All the boys are done in abbreviations on their names. So then next I moved over here. I started setting up maybe how many am I going to need depending on growing. I did each of the different ones to see how they would look together, played with some of the different sizes and how many I can get out of them. This one is for some more future growth. So right now this one will be 6 high. I will then eventually do another one that would be 8 high that would hold 16 totes. And that should get me, I don't think I ever even want to have this many adults, but you never know. So that would keep me for where I need for all of my adults without doing other baby racks. And then kind of nested it out as well. What are the sizes of the sides? So this one's going to have 41-inch tall sides. This one will have a 55, which adds up to 96. So I can perfectly nest out the sides for this and the next bin off of the same 4x8 sheet of plywood. So this is really kind of walking through the thought process that I do. I kind of scribble these things out and think about how do I best utilize the 4x8 sheets of wood? How do I have the least amount of waste? How do I want to build these? And so when I'm doing this one here, it will have the wood across the top, similar to here. It'll have 1/2 inch there. It's going to have 1/2 inch down the sides. It has the 3/4 inch melamine on the shelves. This one, because Mango's tank will be sitting on top of it and it's a little heavier and it's glass, I am going to do some extra support on the back as well. So I will walk you through how I'm doing that, and let's go get started with cutting down some wood. Welcome to my workshop. So this is I have a 1-car garage that I park in. The 2-car garage is where I build stuff. I'm not showing the other side because it's kind of a mess. I save scrap. As you probably learned on the last video, so that I can really make sure I'm nesting everything. But let's see what we're going to work with today before I get started. So my 18-year-old son helped me lift this piece of melamine up here onto the table. I've done the first cut with that, so I will show you how to properly cut melamine. We've got my table saws under here on this side. What we're working with here in the middle, this is a Craig. It is a plunge saw, I guess it's a track saw. And what this does is it glides along the track, and you can use the table that's underneath it, which I'll show in a bit, to get perfectly mitered, perfectly straight cuts. So with building cabinetry, that is quite useful to be able to get perfectly square cuts. It works really well for what we're doing here as well. We're also working with a sawhorse over here holding up the side with a properly sized Amazon box that gets it up to the height of the Craig table. So that's the tools that we're starting with there. We've also got another sheet of 1/2 inch plywood. We've got a couple pieces of scrap plywood here. This is the nice sandy ply. It has a level of water resistance to it. It also takes stain very well. So I like to stain the outsides of these, so that's what we're going to use. This is what I typically use to break down 4x8 sheets. So this is just a simple circular saw. It is attached to the Kreg jig that's on here. This allows you to adjust for whatever size that you're needing down to very precise cuts, and it's got a rail. And I'll take a video of me using this as well. It can get you some really good cuts when the outside edge of your board is perfectly factory cut. You lay the board on top of the foam here, this purple foam, and it allows you to plunge cut into it with the circular saw. So really cool setup. A lot of Kreg stuff. If Kreg ever wants to sponsor me, that'd be fantastic. So that's what we're going to be using. Speaking of Kreg stuff and these big sheets of plywood, I also have this. This is a Kreg, it holds a piece of plywood. So you use it here, you clamp the plywood onto it, and it makes it a lot easier to maneuver a piece of plywood yourself. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you next how to cut the melamine. I've now adjusted my next piece and set it where I need to cut it on the table here. What I want to show you is kind of the process for how to cut melamine. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a very small groove on each side of the board. So I'm going to do just a 1/16 deep along this first edge. I'm going to flip the board and do another 1/16 on the other side. And then I'm going to do the plunge cut to cut all the way through it. I'm going to show you why I do that. So this is what the edge looks like coming out of the factory. It is all chopped up. They actually give you an extra inch of redirection on the melamine board because it is not pretty coming from the factory. So it's got all these little chopped up edges. If you just take at it with a normal saw, that's what you're gonna get. So what you get instead, because I've already done one cut, by using that plunge cut, is this side here. So this side I cut using the plunge technique, where first I grooved it with the saw, just about a 1/16 deep, just to cut through the plastic on the outside. This is just particle board with plastic on it, and then cut it the rest of the way after I did that on both sides. So every cut that's done with the melamine is actually 3 cuts. So that's why it's kind of a pain to work with, but it is waterproof, it's slick, it glides easily for the bins going on there, so that's why I like to work with it. Also, good idea to wear gloves with this. The smooth edge here that I've cut doesn't really splinter, but the edges that have been just factory chopped at do kind of splinter a little bit. So you do want to be careful with that. Of course, wear glasses, have good ventilation. I have an air purifier system on the top. I usually open up the garage door while doing this as well, or wear some sort of a respiratory mask. Melamine's not so great to be breathing in. So let's do these cuts. Got the garage door open now for some more airflow in here. We got 1 down, 5 more to go. So I just brought out the tubs, put them on here to test out, make sure everything fits nice. So it'll be nice and snug horizontally. And then the other direction, it's a little bit of a gap in the front and back. Plus, you remember we'll have that trim piece on there too. So yeah, looks like we got it just right. And now I'm going to cut all the other pieces. So I've got all the melamine cut, and now I'm going to cut the sides out of this 4x8 sheet of 1/2 inch sandy ply. And so now I'm going to use the Kreg jig with just a basic table saw, or a circular saw. I actually just got whatever the cheap one was at Walmart for this, because this one is the one that I will use for things I don't want to use my nice saws on. But I've done one little cut so far. And then I'm going to go ahead and line it up. I measured and make sure it's good, and then we'll go with that. So now that that cut's done, move that out of the way. You can see that purple foam there underneath it. Put this up inside here. Yeah, it works great. That way you can't cut into your concrete or anything. And yeah, now we've got wood to cut down for the sides. So here's that Craig cutting station again that I like to use to get square cuts. So it's got all these little holes in here. So I put a peg across from each other there. And now I'm going to go ahead and slide the wood I just cut down 24 inches wide in through here. And now that it's touching those pegs, I know that it's perfectly square. I'm going to go ahead and measure it out and do that cut. Everything is cut. We've got the melamine off to the right. We've got the sides right here. We've got the bottom shelf and the top board right there. And out there we've got all the trim that will go around the front. That will get stained. The top gets stained. The bottom board gets painted white. The outside of these two gets painted or gets stained. And then the inside of these two and the bottom of the top piece will get painted black. It's just cheaper and easier than the stain, dries faster. Luckily the melamine does not need painted, it's already white. And this is my absolute least favorite part of building these. Man, if I could have somebody else sand and paint, I would gladly do that, but there's no one else to do that. So I will check back in after everything is prepped and we're ready to start assembling. The wood is all painted, everything's drying, and the next step before assembly is routering the groove for the heat tape. So this is one of the shelf panels, and you can see I've already routed the groove in there. I like to take a look and see which side ended up prettier on the cut on the melamine. Sometimes they still get a little chippy when you do them with the triple cut method, but this one on the other side is the prettiest, so I've decided that this will be the back of the shelf. And I've measured out 3.5 inches in from the back edge, and then the heat tape is 6 inches long, so I made a 7-inch groove just to give a little bit of wiggle room, and then routed a little groove into there. So the heat tape is going to run across here. It's going to go through this little groove, and then it's going to continue on to the next shelf. So these grooves will alternate which shelf it is on. This extra space here is still for my screws to go through to attach it, so that way no screws accidentally go in through where the heat tape will be going. I've got all my pieces cut, painted, sanded, routed. Next up, I'm going to pocket hole into this piece. This is one of the side panels. And so what this jig here does is it creates a little pocket to allow you to toenail a screw into this to attach it to the top piece. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a minute. So now I'm going to start assembling. And what I do when I'm doing this is I'm building the whole thing upside down. I'm going to build the whole frame upside down, and then I will put the front trim on after I flip it right side up. So what I've got here, this piece that's upside down on the bottom here, this is the top piece, and this is the front. And I want to make sure that my sides are this direction, not out here, but going in here, because I want him to have that extra support, because Mango's tank is going to be on top and it's a little heavy. But I don't want to show nails or screws going in the top, because that doesn't look pretty. So what I've done is I do these pocket holes. So you've got this little groove here. That's what the jig does that I just showed you, my little Craig pocket hole jig. A lot of Craig stuff. And what we'll do then is I'm going to send a screw down into this hole, one of these little screws here, it will go down in this direction into there, and it will attach and lock in place the sides, which is there and over here, into the top. So that way the side panels are locked into the top with those screws, and you won't see them and they won't look ugly on the top. It'll be seamless, there won't be any nails or screws. I use these little angles here. Getting the sides attached to the top is the most important step to getting everything else lined up right. I also artificially have my first shelf, which is going to be up here, laying here on top of it. That makes sure that this space and this one over here are perfectly lined up. So when I raise this shelf up to here, where it's going to actually sit, I know that it'll actually fit. Now I'm going to start installing the shelves. So the first thing I'm going to do is put my bins in here, and then I'm going to put a piece of cardboard, very thin, on each side. Now, I'm going to get that shelf back. See my routed groove where the heat mat's going to go? I'm going to put that toward the back. And I'm going to put it down into place. I'm going to make sure the fronts are lined up here. Everything looks good. And now I'm going to start screwing it together. I think all my tools are rigid. I also use the star bit screws. I find that the star bits are a lot more forgiving. They're just easier to put in. They go in smooth, you're not going to strip out your screws. And now I'm going to go around and put screws on all four sides. Now I'm just working my way up. So I put the bins up here, put my cardboard back on, and now I'm going to fit my next shelf on, making sure the groove that we routed for the heat tape alternates sides so that you can fish it up and through. Got the base built. My 18-year-old son helped me carry it inside, and now I am using my rigid nail gun. It's a nail gun without an air compressor. It's really nice to attach all of these front pieces here onto the front of the shelves. So this one already has one attached, so it makes it look nice, versus here you can see the edge of the melamine. So I cover this with these pretty little strips of wood so that it matches everything else in the house. Now we're moving on to the back, and we've got a lot of stuff going on back here. So the first thing that I did, you see I've got a couple tubs in place there, is I ran the heat tape through all those grooves. So I started with it on the bottom, and I laced it back and forth and zigzagged it through here. Then I pulled it tight starting from the bottom, and I put just blue painter's tape on it, which works really well. You don't want tight creases, so you want to have this gentle kind of curve here. So that's why the tape goes in a little bit so that it is not too tight. Something else that I didn't do on the last one that I built, and now I need to go back and do it, is a spot for the thermostat probe. So what I did here, you can't really tell because I have it taped down, but I actually took a drill bit here that is about the same size as the probe and used that to really dive it down into that spot. So I made a groove. That way the probe is flat underneath it, and it allows one of the tubs to nicely fit right over the top of the thermostat there. The next thing that I'm doing is I'm putting this board across the back here. One reason is that it's going to help support the center of that top piece. I want to make sure that Mango's cage can sit on top of there. Worst case, if it doesn't work well, I will build a kind of a 2x4 frame to go up and around the top to hold his tank, but I think this is going to be just fine. What that also does is it keeps you from being able to push these bins back too far. So if you push the bin back, it's going to run into this here, and you can't have anybody escape out the back, which was actually how Coconut escaped on the other rack that I built a few weeks ago, because I didn't realize that on the bottom shelf I had never put the stops on it. So that's going to go on there. The next thing that I'm going to be doing as well is putting in all the lighting. So this is, there's 4 of these attached to each row, and then they are adjustable. You can change the colors, you can put timer on it. These lights are for plants, but they do have all the different levels of it. So it's not like it's blue light or red light. You actually can get some natural light look to it. And then these will all just attach right here. So they will all be ran back here as well for all the different shelves. One of the issues I ran into on the last one is that because they're only go up to 12 hours, I need 16 hours. I was running where I had 4 hours without light, and so I actually just turn on the light in my office for that extra 4 hours. I time it so that way there's some light. But what I'm going to do on it this time is I'm actually going to alternate which one is ran on which string. I have 3 different ones, and so that way I can set them slightly off on the timer so that there will always be a light somewhere on it for 16 hours. So even if one of they don't have it on this side, maybe this one has the light and they'll still get some cross lighting shining through there. So I will go ahead and set up all the lights next, and I'll show you what that looks like, and then we'll get it put into place. Now I've got all the lights installed, and the one light that I alternated back and forth on different sides, I put a little piece of blue tape on the back of the control for that, so I know which one needs to be set on opposite hours. And we're done. Time to put it into place. I may or may not add a solid back to it. I also am not sure if I'm going to be able to have all that heat tape on a single thermostat, or if I'm going to have to cut and splice it in the middle and attach it on 2 separate thermostats. That will be left to be determined. There's also a chance that for the bottom here, I can just add a supplemental set of heat mats and attach them to a back. So that would create more heat as well from the bottom to be able to, heat rises. I also typically will put a piece of insulation, either the purple foam or what's like a bubble wrap stuff that is silver. I'll put that underneath as well, because these do sit on tile, and during the winter it can get a little bit colder from the tile as well. So let's get everything all set up. The new rack is complete and it's in place. It's dark out, so the lights are already off on the other 2 for the night, but here we are. So Mango is on top, and we've got space for the little ones to start growing and aging up. And we also have 2 big girls in brumation. Saffron and Amaretto are in there. Otherwise, I think this will probably end up being the girl adult rack underneath Mango, and the boy adult rack on the other side. So we've got some got some new bins today. Vanilla got to move up into a bigger one, as well as Peach. They were ready to size up into the 28. And Snickerdoodle got to size up as well. And Butter Pecan's been watching me. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, post it down in the comments. And hope you enjoyed the content.